Hey guys, Steve here from Bloom Audio. With all the changes to HIFIMAN's lineup and pricing, it can be tough to keep track of exactly what's going on over there. So today we're going to break it down a little bit and talk about the latest changes to HIFIMAN's pricing and lineup and the new headphones they're offering. HIFIMAN has been busy the past year with some new products, updates to existing products, and some price changes that really shake things up quite a bit. So we're going to talk about the new products like the HER9 and the Edition XS, as well as the EF400 DAC. We're going to talk about some changes to the existing lineup, like the new Ananda Stealth Edition, as well as how the price changes impact how products like the Arya and HE1000V2 sit in the lineup and compare to some other headphones. EF400 is the new DAC amp combo from HIFIMAN. It features their Himalaya R2R DAC, which is unique in being an R2R DAC, while most DACs, especially in this price range, tend to be Delta Sigma DACs. So the difference between R2R and Delta Sigma has a lot to do with technical stuff that I don't entirely understand. The upshot is an R2R DAC, just purely based on the science, should be more linear and a little bit more dynamic than a Delta Sigma DAC. So I was eager to hear this and get a little bit more insight onto what the difference between the R2R and Delta Sigma might sound like. So in terms of specific differences, that are immediately noticeable between an R2R and a Delta Sigma DAC with the EF400's Himalaya DAC, there wasn't really anything that's gonna, knock your hat off, blow you away with the sonic differences. I will say the sound does feel very linear, and this is especially notable in the treble, where you got really strong treble characteristics out of the EF400, and that feeling of linearity up through the upper treble without it feeling fatiguing or feeling like there were major spikes in those upper mids or treble. So they definitely did a good job executing that. And I think the overall sound is really good for the price, especially considering this is a DAC amp combo with a pretty powerful amp built in as well. For inputs and outputs, you get a pretty good number of those. On the front, you get the 6.3, you get the 4-pin XLR, 3.5 millimeter, and the 4.4 millimeter balanced. So that should handle just about any headphones that you can throw at it. The back's a little bit leaner. You get USB-C or USB-B for input, and it also features XLR and RCA outputs if you want to use this as a DAC and run the line out to a headphone amp or speaker amp or whatever else you're looking to run there. I should also note it has these switch over here for high gain, low gain, and then if you want to run it as oversampling or non-oversampling, depending on your preference for the sound there. If you've been following HIFIMAN's headphones for a little bit, you've probably seen this design in the ear cup before on HIFIMAN's HER10D and HER10P, which are priced at about $1,200 and $5,500 respectively. So the HER9 brings the price down quite a bit on this and does give you a similar topology diaphragm driver. It's a dynamic driver like the HER10D, the less expensive HER10. Now obviously you get the plastic here instead of the wood, which is one big difference there. In terms of the sound, now these cups are supposed to basically enable you to create a more open back-like sound in a closed back, that those reflections coming from the back of the driver are supposed to be dissipated and contoured through this design. And it is a really solid tuning in the HER9. There is a good sense of air and definition at the top, the kind of stuff you expect from HIFIMAN. There's also pretty solid punch in the mid bass, so it's just a nice tight feeling there. So overall, this is a really fun little close back. I think the performance is really solid for the price. HIFIMAN's lower priced, open back planar magnetic headphones like the Sundara, the Ananda have always been a big hit. And the Edition XS kind of fits right in between there, and it's just a really solid headphone in its own right. So you get really that signature HIFIMAN sound. There's a strong presence in the treble. A lot of things that are very reminiscent of the Arya in terms of the way it creates the soundstage imaging there. The mids are generally pretty neutral, very well-crafted mid-range. Vocals and instruments feel really well balanced. The timbre is pretty natural. The bass is tight and feels very linear down into the sub bass, where there is just like a little bit of lift down there, I feel, in the sub bass. Now, it could be because some of the headphones I'm comparing it to have some sub bass roll off, like the HIFIMAN Sundara, but it just adds that little bit of extra engagement with the way that lower bass is handled. And I would say, if you're shopping for a HIFIMAN, if you can make that price jump from the Sundara to the Edition XS, that little bit of sub bass extension and maybe slight lift really makes the Edition XS worth it for a lot of modern genres for that engaging sound. But otherwise, you're getting this great HIFIMAN sound that, like I said, reflects the Arya a little bit at this low price. Ananda has always sat in the middle of HIFIMAN's lineup sort of philosophically, where, starting with the HE400 to the Sundara, and you have the Ananda, and then when you hit the Arya, you've really hit that upper tier of HIFIMAN's headphones. And so Ananda is never quite had the performance of Arya, but it's definitely, in terms of the overall capabilities of the headphone, a big jump up from Sundara. You throw Edition XS into the mix, though, and Ananda's place becomes a little murkier. With the addition of the Stealth magnets, which have sort of trickled down HIFIMAN's lineup, Ananda does get a little bit of boost in performance and some slight adjustments in tuning that help it maintain its distinct identity in that lineup. So in terms of the Stealth version, it feels a little warmer than the Classic to me. That in that low mids into the bass, there just feels to be a little bit more present. So there's probably going to be some people on both sides of this. For me, I think, again, it improves some genres with the Ananda, things like rock and pop. And also with the Edition XS in the lineup, which is a little bit brighter, helps the Ananda maintain its own identity. The Stealth magnets also just make the soundstage feel a little bit bigger. It just feels faster and more resolving than the older version of the Ananda. The other thing to keep in mind with Ananda is the performance with lower power sources. This is much more sensitive than a lot of other headphones in HIFIMAN's lineup, even more sensitive than the Sundara. So if you're using a lower power source, a DAP, even like a dongle on your phone, Ananda is going to give you stronger performance than most of the other headphones that HIFIMAN offers. And so along with those updates to the technical performance and tweaks in the tuning, that sensitivity also helps Ananda really maintain its identity in this lineup. While the cost of everything else in the world goes up, HIFIMAN decided to drop the price on one of their most popular headphones and another classic headphone. The Arya price went down by $400, putting it at $1299 now, while the HE1000V2 had the price cut by $1,000, putting it at the $1999 price point now. That really shakes things up quite a bit, because when you're looking at comparisons, when you're looking at that under $2,000 range or that under $1,500 range, now you've got the HE1000V2, which is kind of in some ways a sort of a not quite Susvara at a third of the Susvara's price, and you have the Arya, which is sort of For a lot of people, this sort of start of endgame headphones now is under $1,500. One of the things this does is really change the conversations. If you've talked about headphones in that just over $1,000 to $1,500 range, you probably talked about Focal Clear, Audeze LCDX, and HIFIMAN Arya as being this, sort of triangle of headphones, each with similar characteristics and some differences. So in this little pack, Arya went from being the most expensive to now being more in the middle of the pack, which is definitely going to affect a lot of purchasing decisions when you're talking about that $400 now, with the Focal Clear being more expensive and the price being a lot closer to the LCDX. It's the same thing with the HE1000V2. Again, a $1,000 price drop means rather than thinking, well, what's going to be better for me, the HE1000V2 or the SE, or maybe looking at the Meze Empyrean, depending on your tastes, now it's getting into that sub $2,000 conversation. It's closer in price to the Sennheiser HD800 and a number of other headphones. So what do you guys think of the shakeup we've been seeing? Even the HER9 was actually introduced and had its price dropped in pretty quick succession. So how has these shakeups impacted your buying decision? Have you ended up picking up something you weren't expecting to, or holding off? Let us know in the comments. And of course, you can check out bloomaudio.com. A lot of resources and reviews for HIFIMAN, other headphones. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be back soon with more hi-fi personal audio content.